Yo guys, what's going on? It's Speddy. In today's video, I'm going to go over 3 builds that you need to try for PvP. These builds aren't necessarily BIS builds or meta builds, but they are very fun to play in Outpost Rush and open world PvP. The first build I'm going to go over is a Plague Tank, and this build is exactly what it says on the tin. You're a tank that has a lot of plague or disease. You'll be running this build as a full heavy with 500 con, obviously with a sword and shield paired with a Void Gauntlet. Now for the sword, it is important that you have this one perk, otherwise this build will not work, and that is Plagued Strikes. I wouldn't recommend running Plagued Crits because your target has to be below 50% health for disease to proc, so Plagued Strikes is definitely the better option for this build. And with the Void Gauntlet, you have built-in disease with Scream. Now you don't have to spend too much money on this build at all. I mean, I spent 2k for my sword alone, and it is a pretty good sword for this build. And that is Kind, which is a dead perk for PvP, but the other 2 perks are going to work perfectly for this build, and that is Plague Strikes and Trenchant Rend. Every heavy attack I do with this sword will inflict disease and rend, so it's going to be very useful for our team. Don't worry too much about your Void Gauntlet, as we're not going to be using it for damage. Just make sure it does have full con and Scream as the perk on it, and then you're good to go. As for your Heart Rune, you only really have 2 options for this build, and they are Stone Form. If you want to play a bit more on the safe side with more survivability, I'd choose the Cunning Heart Rune of Stone Form. Or if you want more disease, then the Brutal Heart Rune of Bile Bomb. As for our attributes, we will be running this build at 466 con, and that will be pushed over 500 when we use our con food. And as for our weapon mastery trees, for the sword and shield, we'll be using the defender side of these tree, and that is Shield Bash, Shield Rush, and Defender's Resolve. And for our Void Gauntlet, we'll be using Scream, Oblivion, and Orb of Decay. You will have a lot of health running this build, so be sure to always be standing on point or in a clump, and heavy attack and scream as often as you can so your team can burn the clump down fast. Before I go over the next build, I am now live streaming over on Twitch, so if you'd like to watch some PvP from a controller player's perspective, then the link will be in the description and comments down below. So the second build I'm going to go over is a light sword and shield Great Axe execute build. And this build is very strong for locking down single targets, preferably like mages, rangers, or healers. So for my Great Axe I'm currently using is this 21 strength, 10 con, Chain Arcane, Rogue, and Keenly Jagged. You will need Rogue on your Great Axe just for that 19% backstab damage for when your targets do try getting away. And for my sword I'm using the Shadow's Edge, 16 strength, Rogue, Enchanted, and Keenly Empowered. And as for perks you might want to take on your gear, you can take Empowering Leaping Strike and Diminishing Shield Bash, and the only one I would recommend for the Great Axe is Crippling Reap. And for the Heart Rune, I would use this Cunning Heart Rune of Detonate, Accelerating Charge, 30% movement speed while charging, and Empowering Charge, 15% outgoing damage while charging, but reduces the explosion damage by 20%. As for our attributes, we are going to be running this build at 226 strength. That will be pushed over to 50 strength when you use your strength food, 150 dex, and 100 con. And for our sword and shield, we are going to be running with Leaping Strike, Shield Bash, and Shield Rush. And for our Great Axe, we're going to be using Charge, Reap, and Execute. And for this sword and shield Great Axe build, we are looking to land one combo, and I'm going to break it down into 3 simple steps. Step 1 is to find your target and land your Leaping Strike. Step 2 is once you've hit your Leaping Strike, Shield Bash to stun them. And step 3 is roll around your target, swap to your Great Axe, and execute hitting their back. If you do have your Detonate ready, you can throw that in there after you've hit your Shield Bash, just to make sure you secure your kill. This one combo will do a ton of damage, but this build can be hard to play at first, but once you've got used to the combo and the timing of your abilities, you will turn into a machine for taking down your targets. And the last build I'm going to go over may sound like a joke, but it really isn't, and it's a medium spear Ice Gauntlet build. Essentially, all of our damage will be coming from the spear, and we'll be using the Ice Gauntlet as a lockdown weapon, especially with Ice Shower making it harder for your targets to get away. You would never have expected these two weapons to work so well together, especially considering one scales with strength and dex, and the other scales with intelligence, but paired together, these two work very well. You can even run this build as a light if you would prefer, but it does come with the risk of losing health faster, so medium is definitely the sweet spot for this build. So for our weapons, I am currently running with this spear, 31 dex, Arboreal Attunement, Keen, Leeching Cyclone, and this is bugged at the moment. It shows as a rapier that's actually a spear, but really it's an Ice Gauntlet, and it is 21 con, 10 dex, Keen, Deadly Frost, and Lostbane. But again, this Ice Gauntlet isn't a damage weapon, so you can have whatever perks on there as you want. It's not used for damage, it's just to lock down your targets. As for perks you want on your gear, I would really only recommend Enfeebling Skewer. And for our attributes, we are going to be running this build as 100 strength, 225 dex, and 150 con. And for our weapon mastery trees, for the spear, we're going to be running with Cyclone, Sweep, and Skewer. And for the Ice Gauntlet, we'll be running with the builder side of the skill tree, and that is Ice Shower, Ice Pylon, and Entombed. This build isn't just strong for locking down single targets, but it's also good for getting away from them as well. You have Ice Shower to slow them down, Ice Pylon if you're getting chased by, say, a spear and they are looking to skewer you, they will auto lock onto your Ice Pylon instead of you, and also Entombed just for that little bit more survivability. So there are 3 builds that you need to try for PvP. If you made it this far into the video, then leave a comment down below saying I made it, just so I know that you made it this far. If you'd like to join my Discord, it will be linked in the description and comments down below. And don't forget to check out my Twitch, which will also be linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have an amazing day.